This is Deputy Prime Minister Dmitry Kozak of Russian Federation. I would like to respond to the various charges that Sochi is not ready for the Olympic Games. First of all, we have evidence that reporters reporting that we are not ready are indeed abusing their hotel rooms. The proof was taken from surveillance cameras we have set up in bedroom and bathroom, which show excessive water use in shower. We could see this because there are no shower curtain in any bathroom in Sochi. The international outrage of the mass killings of stray dog in Sochi is misplaced, for we are using the carcasses for the Olympic banquet at the end of the ceremonies. Many missing manhole covers were actually recovered to be burned down and made into medals. Also, many photos have gone out of brown water in Sochi. This is not unusual in Russia or in Soviet Union. When I was a small child in Bratsk in Siberia, when we pulled brown water out of well, we were happy and celebrated because of how many vitamins and minerals were in the water. Athletes should be grateful that Russia is providing for their athletic training needs in this way. Several reporters have complained of the lack of lobbies and foyer in hotel. We do not understand the problem here. We are extending Russian hospitality by having owner check people in personally from his hotel bedroom on the first floor. Reports of stray dog in hotel are also erroneous, as these are here as watchmen for hotel and personal possessions. If any safety issues are present in your hotel room, simply wave at camera pointing into your bathroom and KGB will be there within 5 seconds. Or simply make a phone call saying you need help to anyone, since we are listening to all of your phone transmissions and have already hacked your computer. This is Deputy Prime Minister Dmitry Kozak, and welcome to Sochi! Welcome to The Edge of Chaos, starring Neurotoxin and Joe Ryan. Edge of Chaos is a free-flowing discussion occasionally dealing with mature topics.
Ladies and gentlemen, the part of Dmitry Kozak will henceforth be played by Joe Ryan. Neurotoxin, and welcome to The Edge of Chaos. Here's the thing, this isn't funny. This is the most expensive Olympics by far in the history of the modern Olympics. And this is a Winter Olympics. Usually those cost half of what the Summer Olympics cost.
By like twice over, too, yeah. And just ask Mitt Romney, he ran an Olympics, right?
You bought an Olympics, you mean?
Whoever thought that Mitt Romney would be like looking good at how he ran something compared to
really.
Right?
Vladimir Putin, when you're making Mitt Romney look like a good manager, something is seriously wrong with you, sir. Yeah, I never thought I'd hear myself say that about anybody, not even Putin.
Doesn't that put it into perspective?
Really. But this is the thing. You can't even provide quality filtered tap water. People have been able to do that for 100 years. This is not new. This is not pioneering technology. And here's the thing. I mean, I wasn't alive back then, but, it was a few years before my time, and I've read a lot about it. My parents were alive. They're my age at this point. When the 1980s Olympics happened in Moscow. And there were a lot of bad things that went on with those Olympics. I mean, they were in Moscow, and they basically just rounded up all the undesirables in Moscow in one night. All the homeless people, the prostitutes, the vagabonds, the drunkards hanging out in the streets. KGB just went out, rounded them all up, threw them in cars, put them on trains, and drove them about 100 miles away from Moscow, figuring in the 2 weeks for them to find their way back, the Olympics would be over. So Moscow would look neat and polished for the Olympics. Now, is that a nice thing to do? Absolutely not. But at least it looked to the outside world like Russia had its shit together.
Right. They put effort into it, yeah.
Right. And then they stocked the storefronts with, foreign imported food that we'd never seen. So at least they tried to make it look to the outside world. Under Brezhnev, this was a big thing. It was a shithole back then, just like it's a shithole now. But at least they had a front for the West and for NATO. Nowadays, you have where there's foreign reporters, foreign athletes, foreign delegations, and you have bathrooms with no shower curtains and and rusty tap water.
Yeah, it's
Are you freaking kidding me? How they weren't exactly mighty to begin with, but how they've fallen.
That they can't even fake it. Yeah, right.
See, I don't know if it's that they can't fake it. My theory is that nobody cares to fake it anymore. I mean,
Maybe.
I'll never forget, it was a couple of years ago, actually more than that now, when they had their little Proton satellite that they were trying to launch. It was 2012, right before Putin's re-election. So it was still Medvedev as president. But don't get it twisted, Putin was still in charge. When in Kazakhstan, from the spaceport in Kazakhstan, where it launched, got about 2 feet in the air, and just boom.
Yeah. Not to get off on a tangent on this, but one thing that pisses me off, and this is a different show argument, but one thing that pisses me off is a little bit of trivia question for our listeners. Where is it that NASA astronauts blast off from right now to get to the International Space Station? Where is it? Wait a minute. Let me think. Florida. No. Oh, right. It is Kazakhstan. People from US and they come to Kazakhstan to go to space. So we're relying on that shit that blows up.
Kazakhstan is its own country. It's
not
part of Russia.
But it's their technology, though. Isn't that pathetic?
It is, but the thing is, I've never heard of a problem with an American launch. I mean, yeah, it's their technology, but it's still a Russian launch. So kind of where I was going with this is that, again, you would never have something like this happen during the Soviet era, during the Brezhnev era, even though back then that spaceport was within Soviet borders. Because you knew the foreign media was watching. And if you allowed the foreign media to see a Soviet satellite explode before it got up into space, you were going to Siberia.
And even North Korea can occasionally launch a satellite into space. I mean, Jesus.
Well, North Korea, yeah, but North Korea is prone to these fuck-ups. You know, they wave their dicks and they don't have anything. The USSR at least used to look like it was some sort of superpower, some sort of force to be reckoned with.
And instead, this looked like I said, a Winter Olympics in Pyongyang.
Essentially, yes.
I couldn't help but think that when I looked at it. I'm like, that's the Ryongyang Hotel in fucking downtown Pyongyang. It's a giant monolithic cement slab that dominates the entire thing. It's got glass, and inside there's nothing. It was glassed in was the major announcement. That thing's been sitting as a husk for almost 20 years.
So they discovered glass. They figured out how to make glass.
It was starting to be built 2 Kims ago, and it's still there, but there's nothing inside it. It looks like a building. Like before, it looked like it was perpetually looking like it's under construction building with rusting cranes. You know, this big rotting cement thing, and then there was this big announcement. Oh, a foreign telecom is going to finish the building. All they did was put glass panes on it and an antenna on top. And there was a journalist, I forget who it was, they stole it from the hotel away from their chaperones, and they managed to get inside it and take a few pictures. It's nothing in there. There's nothing in there. There's a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. That's it.
And they can't even afford the electricity for that light bulb.
It wasn't on, yeah. But yeah, that's what it looked like. It's just, when you look at, when journalists have gone to Pyongyang and they take pictures of what their hotel room looks like, it doesn't look bad, but it's if you scratch just below the surface, you could tell it was sort of hastily prepared, and there's certain, just little missing pieces that it looks like a Western hotel room, but you could tell it's not. This kind of looked like that. It's these huge rooms with 3 beds and no TV, no pictures on the walls. You know, just a blank white wall to stare at. It's ridiculous.
They should be lucky they have sheets on bed. When I was child in USSR, we had to sleep on raw pig skin, and the pig was still alive.
I guess I should be amazed that there's not a pig in the room with them or something.
Well, there might be wonders in the Olympics are just starting. Here's the thing. See, this is the thing. You're absolutely right. This is what Russia is starting to look like. Starting to look like Pyongyang. Only the thing is, it's not starting to. This is how it's always been. I was there. I grew up there. I was there till I was 9 years old. I remember it in vivid detail, and I have relatives in different parts of Russia. I mean, I'm from St. Petersburg, which does not look like this. But most of Russia, outside of Moscow, this is an accurate depiction. Everything is half-assed. There's the front to make it look pretty, but it's completely half-assed. There's a city called Rostov. It's a huge city. It's kind of on the Ukrainian border. It's actually around where Sochi is, a little bit further north. And I had a great aunt who lived in that city back then. And I remember going there as a small child, and it was the most ridiculous thing in the world. So they built these, I wouldn't call them skyscrapers. They're 15-story buildings, but they're the tallest buildings in that city. This is a big city. Well, they built them so that the U.S. satellites going overhead could look and see, look, big, pretty, colorful buildings. And that was about an accurate depiction as that hotel in Pyongyang. Like, I've seen this with my own eyes. You go in there, there's no lights in the stairwells. You got 12 floors of stairwells, and the elevator doesn't work. 12 floors of stairwells that are not lit.
Oh, God.
And if the reason
you will find way in dark like proper Russian.
But, like, jokes aside, they couldn't supply water to the top floors because, it's a 12, 15-story building, and the water supply facilities for that city were not intended to push water up that high. They didn't have the pressure. So just everything in that city, it was projected to look pretty. That was the idea. That's what was engineered and designed to do. But nothing worked. And this is how Russia works. It looks pretty, but it doesn't work. And if you think about, poverty is a different thing. Like, when you think of a place that's very underdeveloped. There's places like this in the United States that are very rural. People are still riding horses or very old cars. The roads are not paved. No real running water, maybe like a well or, like a little, like it's a running water, just a spout outside that you have to go get your water from, outhouses, whatever. There's places in the U.S. that are still there. That's not really poverty. It just hasn't been developed. That doesn't mean they're poor. In Russia, and really during the Soviet times, they had this idea that they wanted to develop quickly, except they didn't have the resources. So they developed it half-ass.
Well, if we develop half-ass, we can spread to twice as many area of country.
Yeah. Right. It's like, I don't have the time and the resources to go to college, so I'm going to write my own diploma. That's essentially Russian management in a nutshell. And it's not working anymore. Part of it's just modern media and how quickly everything gets out. Part of it is that Putin doesn't even have the balls to do that. So that's what we're seeing. We're seeing how Russia really is with these Olympics. And that's why it makes me laugh uncontrollably when earlier this week, or last week, they threatened to invade Ukraine.
Yeah.
This is
they couldn't invade a borscht stand right now. Really? Seriously.
Right, the stray dogs would be a match for their military, pretty much.
Pretty much.
You have, obviously, we all know what's going on in Ukraine, and Yanukovych is still clinging to power, probably just till the end of the Olympics, because Putin told him to. And now, I forget who it was, but yet a Russian official, about as reasonable as Dmitry Kozak, going off about how these protests are all bought by the EU, by the UN, by the US. That I think one figure he mentioned was $20 million a day paying the protesters, just the U.S. government.
Some kind of diplomat, I think, some kind of ambassador. And that's the ambassador. So, right. That's how well they negotiate, that kind of stuff.
And he threatened to invade Ukraine. They said, if this doesn't stop, we're going to have to put boots on the ground and put the military into the Ukraine, because there's a 1994 accord by which the Ukraine gave up the nuclear weapons that they inherited from the USSR they didn't really want, by which I think the US, the UN, the EU, and Russia all signed a treaty that they're going to respect the Ukraine's border. So now, using Gaddafi logic, Putin and his cronies are saying that these protests are disrespecting Ukraine's sovereignty because they're paid for from outside, therefore we need to invade Ukraine. It's about as reasonable as the brown water has minerals.
Grasping at the thinnest of straws, yeah, sounds like.
Really. But the thing is, they could threaten this. But if they tried to actually, I could just see them trying to invade Ukraine. It's like, the rifles don't work. There's no ammo, there's no fuel. The tanks look scary, but they don't do anything because they can't move because there's no fuel.
Do we really have only surplus from World War II?
No, I think we have a few tanks that belong to the Romanov dynasty back in that barn over there.
Do they still have the Tsar tank? Please tell me they do.
I don't think they have the Tsar tank. But yeah, this happened in World War II. The entire war was basically just fought by throwing hundreds of thousands of guys armed with bricks at the Germans. And
they only won because they could have millions slaughtered and not even feel it.
Right. They had the population for this. That was the only thing.
Attrition, yeah.
Right. And
you mow down a whole column of 50, 100 guys, 500 guys. We have 4 more columns lined up behind him. Don't we?
Basically
Guns at them from this side. Believe me, they'll march on you no matter what.
Yeah, their only chance of survival is to win. They're not surviving if they retreat. That's for sure.
Every 5th person had a gun, and the rest had pieces of wood cut up like guns.
Bricks. And this is not a joke. This is a real thing. I mean, when they took Kiev, what they did, this is an actual strategy used by the Soviet military. This is not a joke. What they did before they took back Kiev, which is the modern capital of Ukraine, is they went through the countryside and they collected all the boys that were over 14, and they drafted them. No training. They'd never seen a gun in their lives. Just, you're a rural boy. That's it. You're in the military. Get in here. And a lot of the Ukrainians were German sympathizers at the time. This is when they're liberating Ukraine from one psychotic fascist state for a different psychotic fascist state.
No, you want to join our psychotic fascist state. It is better. We are men. He is a girl. Anyway.
More or less, right. He has you fight with gun. We have you fight with brick.
Which is harder? You are proving your mettle today, little man.
More or less, right. So these guys, like I said, no training, never seen a gun. What they got, they had 2 bricks that they gave each of them. This is chronicled. This is not a stand-up. I want to make that very clear. This is not a joke. 2 bricks each, and they stormed the river that runs outside Kiev. That's built on. It's called the Dnieper. So you've got the Germans with machine guns and artillery on the other side, looking at them. What the fuck are they doing? Right?
It's like sending in a horde of monkeys each holding a grenade, isn't it?
Pretty much.
Oh my God.
They do more with it.
What if you've got millions of monkeys? Every 10th monkey might cause some damage. You never know.
It's like that game they have now, Clash of Clans, where you have like the undead running with bombs, and as long as they get there, they blow the place up. You win.
And it's like what it lacks in strategy, it makes up for in sheer chaos. And
pretty much. Yeah. And they crossed. I mean, all the bridges were either blown up or guarded very heavily. So they stormed the river. They had these guys cross the river in the widest, deepest place, because that's what the Germans didn't expect. And they just mowed. In that battle alone, the Soviets lose 200,000 guys, 200,000 casualties just in that battle.
So soon enough, there wasn't a problem crossing the river because there was a bridge of corpses to walk over.
More or less, but they won. They won because what they did, the machine guns and the artillery of the Germans they ran out of ammo, and they overheated. Machine guns, you can't just keep firing it for hours. And then they marched in their real military and just mowed it down, and the Germans ran away, going, Jesus Christ, I'm never fighting Russians again. These guys are insane.
They just don't care, yeah. It's taking that whole kamikaze idea the Japanese had and running with it, isn't it? Leave it to Stalin, huh?
Really, but again, for the kamikaze, it was the idealism. It was like these guys are samurai and they're sacrificing themselves. These are kids from the countryside. It's like, hey, you point a gun at his head and here, you take 2 bricks and you're going to run at that guy that has a machine gun. But sir, I don't want to hear it. Now!
You have to hand it to Hitler and to a really greater extent Stalin, that they showed the world you can do a lot when you don't give 2 shits about human life. You really can't get a lot done.
I have to disagree with you to an extent there regarding Hitler. I mean, yeah, he didn't give a shit about human life, but as far as his military, nothing like that ever happened in the German military. Nothing.
That's true.
They were very good to their life. See, Hitler was a fascist. His idea of collectivism is we find a class to exclude, and everything is their fault. Everyone else gets treated well. Now, I'm not in favor of this by any stretch of the imagination. This is a far more effective model. In the USSR, it's just everyone's enemy. It's just playing everybody against each other. So, in any case, going back to our modern discussion, now this would not work. This strategy used by Stalin, Putin could not use it if he wanted to, because people communicate too well. Even in rural areas, even in little shitty cities, they have internet, they have cell phones, they have satellite dishes like Egypt or Syria.
Oh, yeah.
You just can't keep people under control by lying to them, and you can't lie to your foreign enemies that this is how it's done. I mean, when those troop transports, if they actually roll into Kiev, these soldiers are going to get out. They're going to be like, look, we have no ammo, so you don't need to worry about us shooting at anybody. We were wondering if we could ask you for some food, because we're kind of hungry. It's a joke. Just like when Putin threatened that he was going to shoot down the Tomahawk missiles that Obama was threatening to shoot into Syria. It's like, dude, really?
Yeah. I like this. Obama should have said, "Yeah, oh yeah, I dare you to do it. I dare you to try."
No, Joe, you don't understand. When you throw a rock at a Tomahawk missile, that doesn't shoot it down.
Well, yeah, and it's kind of like, even if they fired a missile at our missile, it's like, how many of their people would they kill when the missile inevitably goes off course and blows up a fucking town in Russia?
Well, it wasn't in Russia. It was right on the Syrian coast there. But yeah, so no one would even notice.
Right. Well, of course, yeah.
What did all the fish in that sea do to you, Putin?
Wait, yeah, I guess so, yeah. It strikes me as kind of the idea that North Korea is going to invade South Korea. It's like, what, with their wooden things that look like guns and their 4-foot-high soldiers that are starving to death? Am I scared of that? No, I'm not really scared of that.
Well, every soldier's be like trying to push in line, get in there, because as soon as they're there, they're gonna take off the uniform and run away.
This makes me laugh, by the way. Every time some Republican asshole's like, "Ooh, scary North Korea, they have nuclear bombs now." It's like, okay, I'll bet you money right now that if they launched a nuke at America tomorrow, they'd end up nuking their own country when the thing falls out of the sky in 20 seconds.
Pretty much.
It collapses on the launch site, blowing up everyone there and half the country.
Yeah, here's the thing. So when you're talking about, to extrapolate on that, with neocon assholes talking about how much of a threat North Korea is, when I hear John McCain talking about what a threat Russia is, I'm hearing the exact same thing.
Yeah, he's stuck in 1970 or something, yeah.
It's like, John, listen, John.
Okay, it's not Brezhnev anymore. No.
Brezhnev's dead.
That's not Brezhnev.
Yeah, he was old and decrepit like you, and he died. Yeah.
Oh, and it's not Khrushchev either. No, he's long dead too. Yeah, long dead.
Not even Gorbachev. Nope. No. Alive, but yeah, no. John, that was about 4 wars ago.
Still got his splotch on his head, yes, but he's not the president anymore. No. Gone. Nope, not Yeltsin. No, he died with a bottle of vodka in his hand. It's not him.
He was happy. Died happy. Yeah. Had a happy death. So this is not a threat. This is not a threat. The only reason we treat it as a threat is because even Obama and Democrats have to act like it's a threat. Like this whole, we're going to invade Ukraine, or even the whole, we're going to shoot down your Tomahawks. I wish that our politicians on either side of the aisle had the balls to say, okay.
Right.
Just to do it.
Well,
okay.
and I think that, to comment on that specifically, how it works, quote, quote, doesn't work in America, is that you're always, I think Maher did this in New Rules recently, where it's always like having to look tough, and he's like showing the examples of where that's gone terribly wrong in campaigns, where it's like this whole idea of Republicans being, we're the macho party and you pussy Democrats. It's what's caused like John Kerry to go out with a hunting rifle and have promotional shots go out of that, and why Dukakis got into a tank for some fucking reason. It's just stupid, macho bullshit. This idea of, I'd bomb the shit out of them. Yeah, I would too. I'd bomb them twice. This whole, like, big dick kind of contest that, some on the right and some on the left, too, think that passes for foreign policy. Like Harlan said, the words of a 13-year-old to describe foreign policy. It's ridiculous. It's stupid, and it's fucking primitive as all hell.
You want to talk about that? Let's talk about the State of the Union. And, President Obama talking about our diplomacy. Oh, we're not bending over for Iran and Syria with this. No. We have an aggressive, powerful military to back our diplomacy. Hey, Barack, I think you got to call Rouhani and tell him that he didn't get the memo.
Yeah, I love how they're like, didn't he say that they're getting them to disassemble things or to ramp down things, and then Iran said, we're not ramping down shit.
We're not disassembling.
We're not disassembling shit. we're not refining above a certain amount. That's it. Like, it's like a laser-specific thing.
Rouhani is to Ahmadinejad what Obama is to Bush Jr. He has the exact same policies. He's just a better politician. He can talk it up better so that stupid people actually believe it for about 5 seconds.
So let me get this straight. So you have a leader that has the same policy, only he's not a babbling nincompoop? That's the difference? Okay.
Right, he can present it, but it's the same line of bullshit. And it's like, come on, you have to stop pretending this works. You want to fix this. You want a different foreign policy. You want a foreign policy that actually works. You want any policy that works. You have to stop pretending this one works. It's like you can't say, I'm going to find a job and then quit snorting crack. Like, no, you just stop.
You should tell Rob Ford that. You should tell Rob Ford about that. Yeah,
it's like, stop. Go to rehab, stop doing hard drugs, and then you can find a job. That's usually how things work. So, again, seeing, and again, this is kind of going a little more of a macro topic, but they talk about the first half of the 20th century. That was the century of total war, where everybody's involved, like you said.
2 world wars, yeah. Didn't we have
200,000 guys?
War in there somewhere?
Right. Well, there's a lot of little wars in between, but 200,000 guys with bricks, no military training. That's total war. Okay. Then you have the second half of the 20th century, the Cold War, or as I call it, the century of proxy war.
Because we had Vietnam, which was pretty big. We had Korea.
Korea, and then for the Soviets, they put their dicks everywhere too, with Afghanistan and all that. But the thing is,
Georgia
was later. But those were proxy wars, where one side, one empire would invade, and the other would fund the insurgency. And if you notice, every single one of those conflicts, the insurgency would win. In Afghanistan, the Soviets had their asses handed to them. Right. In Vietnam, we had our asses handed to us. You see how that works? And even
in Korea, we did have our asses handed to us, but then we kind of got to a halfway point and stopped.
Right. Yeah. So,
that was a draw.
We kind of did that in Vietnam, and then as soon as we left, it all went to shit.
That was a draw, yeah.
South Vietnam, too. But if you look at the modern era, starting maybe like mid-90s, actually both sides have tried to pull pages out of that Cold War book. Like if you look at the U.S., obviously Afghanistan and Iraq, we went in there, not a lot of Russian support for the other side, and we still had our asses handed to us in both places, let's face it. Okay. Then the Russians went into Georgia.
Yeah, they did again.
Right. So that just doesn't work anymore. You can't do that. And not only can you not do that, the reason you really can't do it is because you can't sell it to your own people as the other side is behind them. It's like, no, you're just going in there waving your dick, like you said, getting in a tank, firing off rifles. It's like, dude, get out of there. We have no business there. So now what we're turning into, because this is so unpopular, even Syria, Obama couldn't even sell missiling Syria, much less putting troops on the ground.
Oh, no, and Libya the same thing, even though people didn't like Gaddafi, but, people didn't want to commit troops or actual boots on the ground there. We were kind of okay with the whole, we'll offer air support. People sort of grudgingly did that, because I think people think planes are cool and they remember Top Gun. But they didn't like that he did it without any kind of, blessing from anyone besides himself. But that's another show.
But he couldn't even sell that in Syria.
Right.
And that was only 2 years later. So where I'm going with this is that now we're turning into basically a century or a half century more accurately, of guys yelling at each other.
It's kind of a paper tiger, nowadays.
You have wars going on. Obviously, Syria would be the most prime example, Iraq too, where they have their hands in it. Our government has its hands in it. Putin has his hands in it. No one's denying that, and the Saudis and China too. It's going on, they fund them, they arm them, but neither side is putting their military there. And it's not because they don't want to. It's because they realize that if they do, we're going to lynch them. And that goes for Russia, too. Don't get the impression that Putin has this authority to just throw his military. He hasn't done it because he can't. The minute he did that, his military would march on the Kremlin and hang him.
And I think maybe it's the uneasy coexistence of government and politics and then business, where you have all of this shit that has to be used somewhere that's made. You know what I mean? All the toys. How else are you going to use the toys? Unless you make these little wars everywhere. And that's the difference now. They don't want to commit actual troops to actual wars anymore. They want to more commit, kind of smaller amounts, or just, it's sort of the minimum they can do these days, isn't it? I don't know. It's something in that vein.
The thing is, the least they can do for the military contractors.
That's right.
Part of it. I mean, I agree with you, that's part of it. But even that. Now, the reason for this is just transparency of information. People just don't think this is cute anymore. And all it comes down to is these guys yelling at each other. That's all they have left, is just threatening each other. And all the people that they're threatening to attack each other with going, just try and give that order. Watch what happens. I dare you. These bricks you're giving us, they're not going up the other guy's head.
Exactly.
So this is it's funny to me because this has been a very common topic on the show, common subject to discuss. Just the hollowness of shit that politicians say nowadays. And I think we should segue a little bit into the United States.
Speaking of hollow, the big story this week, and it proves how slow a week it was in this country, was the CBO report that it's a long, sprawling report. It's been misrepresented in the media as being all about Obamacare and its effects on the job market. But that's a simplification, a gross simplification, because like most CBO reports, it's huge, it's long, it's hundreds of pages. And the relevant passage that everyone was quoting and arguing about actually has come from another related report of Obamacare specifically from like now to 2027 or something. It's just an Outlook type of report. And what it said was that 2 to 2.5 million people might not choose to work because since they now can simply just buy insurance, they don't need these jobs that a lot of times are low-paying jobs that they're taking just because they get benefits with them. You know, a lot of times, you know, someone will be a contractor, like a husband will be a contractor, or be like, you know, my sister's husband who works on a fishing boat. A lot of times you're 1099ing that and you don't get benefits. So a lot of these people, they would have these jobs just for the benefits because it was cheaper than, you know, having to just buy health care for the family on their own on the open market. So but here's the problem, and this is kind of, Matt Taibbi kind of put this into perspective for me on a blog post reacting to how boring and predictable the media response was on both sides. How anything that comes out, it's digested to one of two group audiences in the mainstream media, either Republicans going, see, Obamacare costs jobs, which is not what it said, or the Democrat media going, ha, stupid Republicans, they got it wrong again, look at them, they just can't get it right. Whereas it's not, and I guess the White House is putting out comments that made it seem like 2 million people leaving the workforce is a good thing, and it's not necessarily. I don't know, that's a matter of opinion. As he put it, it's not anything to crow about, but it's funny how both sides, again, missed the point. I don't know. I mean, I guess I think I can already predict how you react to Obamacare in general. I think it's just part and parcel with, you took a broken system and just kind of slapped a new coat of paint on it, maybe. It's sort of facade deep, too, because the real problem is the fact that we didn't actually change anything, right? We just mandated people buying the kind of insurance
the same shit product that doesn't work for people before, right?
We already had, yeah.
To borrow a line from our friend Nick Sorrentino at Against Crony Capitalism, Obamacare was an extremely stupid reaction to a very real problem. And, you know, healthcare in this country was a fucking nightmare before we had Obamacare. Let's stop pretending that it wasn't.
Yeah, that whole Hannity line of, oh, it's the best system in the world. No, it's not. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. Stop saying that.
Yeah, Hannity needs to just shut the fuck up.
And what he really means is for the people at the top it was, because you could just buy any kind of treatment that you want.
Well, I'm sure Putin has great health care, too. That's not an indicator of anything.
Zurich and get it, yeah, exactly.
Right. No, even back in Moscow. There's the difference between Moscow and Sochi or Rostov. But in any case,
people don't even realize, by the way, on a quick aside, that how rich a city Moscow has become. That's because that's where all the wealthy elites live.
Oh yeah.
It's ridiculous.
It's a medieval empire. All roads lead to Rome. It's just how it works.
Right. And it's crazy how rich some of the people that live there are. Yeah, there's quite a boutique industry there.
In any case, going back to our topic with the CBO report, my response to that, first of all, a lot of what you said in the beginning about how people not needing to move up. Basically, this puts a damper on economic growth. And so what I talk about is regulation gives people a disincentive to work, and a disincentive to produce, and a disincentive to do more. This is not a Republican standpoint. This is economics 101. If you have a business that wants to grow, now they have to be prepared to grow a lot more before they cross that 50 employees threshold. Because otherwise, they're not going to, it's going to cost them way more than it benefits them to go to 51 employees from 45. Same thing with people who have to cross a threshold where they're no longer subsidized. There's no point in taking a job that's going to pay you $2 more an hour if now you're going to have to shell out, hundreds of dollars more a year for your own health care, and so forth. That's kind of, this is kind of the problem.
And that was in part the Fox argument, but it's not entirely without merit, I guess. But yeah. Anyway.
Well, of course it wasn't part of the Fox argument. It's too reasonable. It's too logical.
No, that's what Hannity was saying. He was saying the same thing. It disincentivized work.
It was part of it.
Yeah.
Okay. This is the problem. Now, I'm surprised you didn't bring this up. A lot of very liberal we'd consider them leftist radicals in this country, but in Europe they'd just be one of the guys,
right,
would say, look, it's because the regulations aren't blanket enough. It's because every time we have a regulation in this country, you have 1 page of regulation and 10 pages of exceptions.
Oh,
And,
yeah, no, yeah.
and that's a huge problem, obviously. For one, well, some of the exceptions are to let the biggest crony businesses get out of the regulation, but it's also to gain the political approval of a lot of small businesses and people that are affected by it. So now you set this threshold basically just arbitrarily. Okay, 50 employees. Okay, this is the income threshold for subsidies. Well, in 5 years, 10 years, everything changes. The economy changes. A business that employs 50 people now is not the same as one that employs them 10 years from now. Same thing with that, obviously, inflation and that income threshold. To update this shit takes forever and causes fights in Congress just to update the numbers for inflation and change the thresholds. So you have that bureaucratic nightmare. This is a real thing. This is not a partisan standpoint. This is what you have to think about when you're making laws. This is why laws need to be simple, because otherwise this is what you run into. These are the snags. Just pure technicalities.
And that's why you and I are in agreement about the simplicity argument. I just always say they should have just said, Medicare for all, poof, done, everyone's in.
So, and you get the...
At least that was an existing program it was a known quantity. When you're simply expanding it to everybody, at least you can debate it on that purpose instead of this worst of both worlds, half-ass bullshit, freaking let's make the HMO rich, lobbyist juice thing. It is a monster.
The HMO, it's the providers and the pharmaceutical corporations, everyone involved, really. Now, when you have basically full-blown socialism, where it's just a single-payer system, you pay the government and the government pays for it, there's a whole myriad of other problems with it. There's no doubt in my mind that that's a bad idea, and it doesn't work anywhere, and I'll argue that all day, but that's a different show. What I'm trying to drive home is every time someone on Fox News calls this socialism, they're lying.
Oh, of course, because it was something that they wanted in the 90s. This is dole care from the 90s.
Absolutely.
This system, that's what they wanted, but the party has changed so much.
It was written by Mitt Romney. Let's just not forget that.
Well, that too, but I'm saying dole was before that. This is like in the mid-90s in reaction to Hillary Care in 94. And, this was their system. You keep the private HMOs in there. You basically juice that in. You just retain that. But it's the same as here where you have, one utility in these big areas. They can get away with to do anything they want.
It's a corporate subsidy with a million exceptions when it comes to who pays for it. It's all it is. How is that socialism? I'm not a fan of socialism, but let's stop calling that socialism, please, because then what happens is you have dumbasses like O'Reilly and Hannity and Limbaugh railing about socialism, and all dumbasses from the other side like Lawrence O'Donnell and Rachel Maddow have to do is come out and point out that's not socialism, because it's not.
It's the same boring, look, you got it wrong again. Look, you got it wrong again.
And now, they don't have to defend Obamacare. They just have to point out that Sean Hannity is lying. That's
like
an idiot, pointing out that the sky is blue.
Right. And lost in the shuffle is the actual issue. Right, exactly. And people on both sides of that are weary of it. You and I are on opposite sides of that issue, and we're both weary of it because you're ignoring the real issue, you're ignoring the real problem, and you're not offering any real solutions.
But it's the same thing that's going on, really, with Russia versus the U.S. You have these two old, decrepit dogs and these party leaderships barking at each other, and neither of them even has any teeth left to bite. It's just like, arr, 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 and people are like, shut up, both of you, Jesus Christ. I'd get my shotgun and shoot both these dogs, but it's just not worth the ammo. Just shut up.
And then you just buy muzzles the next day, yeah.
Pretty much. It's like, it's so ridiculous. And what really gets to me, honestly, is that you still have a large plurality of people in this country, I don't think they're a majority anymore, that listen to this shit.
Oh, sure, sure they do.
Buy into it, and they go off railing, presenting this whole case for how one side are a bunch of idiots, and they are. And then they want to defend the other, like, look, they're saying the same thing. Okay, one of my favorites, this is people I've been arguing with recently, Citizens United. Now, we're not going to argue the merits or demerits of that
We've
case.
Done it to death, yeah.
Right. But when people want to attack Citizens United as a Republican thing, okay, you know that super PAC ready for Hillary that's running a campaign for her 3 years in advance?
Oh, God.
When she hasn't declared a candidacy? It's mind-boggling how anyone could be so stupid as to take that seriously.
All right.
Hold on, just real quick.
Yeah.
But real quick, who allowed super PACs? Why would a super PAC come from? Citizens United.
It's
and the
bullshit.
same people bitching about that being a Republican thing, they're reposting shit from Ready for Hillary. It's like, come on.
Right, that's delusional. Well, here, I got to pause for a second.
Okay.
And we have to ponder the horror, the awful, awful horror possibility. Now, you and I were getting ready for 2016. We're getting the marshmallows, we're getting the popcorn, that ready.
Pretzels and beer. Yeah.
I'm actually on it's kind of a program, so maybe it'll be more like granola or like,
there you go.
low-fat snack.
Healthier, yeah.
But anyhow, we're getting the little snack foods ready, but you know what might end up happening? I'm praying. I'm not religious, but I'm still praying that we don't get Hillary Clinton versus Bush 2016. No. And if that happens, America, think on this. Since 1980, there have been 10 elections, including the one that's about to happen. So let's say that. That's 10 elections. Out of those 10, 9 of them would have had a Bush or a Clinton or both in them if that does happen. Then Clinton against in 2016. How fucking pathetic and emblematic of the problem that we're discussing would that be? Jeb Bush? Oh my God. And of course, in another 20, 30 years, when, I guess it'd be more like 20, when Chelsea Clinton runs against George P. Bush, you laugh. I'm telling you, man.
No, I'm telling you, man, that's not happening.
I'm telling you, man.
I'm telling you, man, that's not happening. Are there any Roosevelts or Kennedys running today?
Chelsea has taken a job really suspiciously kind of political in her adult life. Like, she's become kind of a public policy worker, activist sort of person who's worked for things that seem like they'd be on a resume later for her leadership abilities. You know what I mean?
Okay, when you have Chelsea Clinton, when you have the name Clinton on your resume for leadership abilities, nothing else is going to matter. You're done. You're out of the running.
How boring is it that the Democrat establishment is literally just throwing all of their love toward Hillary, who, who
the fuck else do they have?
They're fucking Elizabeth Warren.
She's not establishment. The Democratic establishment can't back her. Are you kidding me? That's like saying the Republican establishment has Ron Paul.
He's as established as Obama was. Okay, he was a first-term senator when he ran too. I'm just saying, and she'll be.
No. I'm not talking about establishment. I'm talking about establishment in terms of policy.
No, you're talking right. Well, you're right. Yes, that's okay. Yeah, on that level, you're right.
Who else are they going to get behind? Joe Biden?
He's talking about how awesome.
I want to see that. That'll be hysterical. It'll make John Kerry in 2004 look like a good run. That'd be great. I want to see. I hate that clown. I would love to see him run for president.
I just would like, for a moment, wouldn't it be interesting to have Joe Biden's mind be projected into the real world for a second so you could see inside it the kind of delusion necessary?
There's these pills called LSD. Pop one, you'll see what you're trying to see.
He thinks that the human gaff machine, who has spent 8 years pretty much just doing nothing but combing his hair plugs and making little giggly faces behind Obama during the States of the Union addresses, thinks that someone as old as he's going to be, as crotchety as he is, as media unfriendly as he is, and as gaffe prone as he is, has any chance in hell. A snowball has a better chance in hell than he does winning the presidency.
He's like a Democratic Rudy Giuliani.
Not to mention,
he gets up there, says all this shit with a big smile, and you're just like, dude, that makes no sense.
Now, vice president is the perfect job for him. It is no responsibility, really. You're kind of just a warm body that's there in case the dude in charge dies. And usually, like, you just have the rest of the term to serve out. You're just sort of there, filling in, and then we can elect somebody else if we want. And we've done that before. Gerald Ford, I'm looking in your direction. It wasn't because of a death, but the same thing applied.
Well, no, but Agnew was involved, and he resigned even before Nixon. But that's not the point. It's like, in the late medieval era, in the Enlightenment era, the kings had jesters that would follow them, and as they were saying stupid shit, the jester would make faces behind them to make everyone laugh. That's kind of what Joe Biden is for Obama. Obama says ridiculous shit, and I was like, good God. And then Biden makes a face, and everyone smiles.
Biden makes a gaffe, and everyone forgets what Obama said. Yeah,
Pretty much. It's just this has been a lot of vice presidents have been this way. And it's actually worse when it's in the other direction, when the evil smart guy is vice president and the jester is the president, like the last administration.
Will his presidential stump speech include, "Unchain Wall Street"? They're going to put y'all back in chains. Such little gems like that. Will it have that? Please let it have that. Now, I'm not saying it wouldn't be entertaining, but unless we're running a presidential reality show called The Stupidest Candidate Contest to see who can be the biggest dumbass, I don't think it bodes very well for our...
Well, hey, I mean, if Rick Perry runs, that's pretty much what you've got, Biden versus Perry.
Did you ever think that you would look at George W. Bush as like the smart guy in the room? He's looking better by the year, isn't he?
Yeah, with some of these guys running.
Wow. You thought moron governor from Texas that people would think Bush, right? But
no, that's not who comes up.
He yanked that title away, didn't he?
In any case, going back to serious discussion of the presidency, who else do they really have? Okay, Martin O'Malley from Maryland.
No, people don't even know who he is except for the fact that that guy from The Wire kind of was playing him.
Everyone in Maryland knows who he is, and they hate him. You can't become a president. You can't get elected president when you're an unpopular governor, wherever you came from. This is we don't really pay attention to this, but it's true.
No,
Romney, I knew a lot of people from Massachusetts when Romney ran the first time in 2008. And they're like, no. Anyone but Romney. That guy, when he was governor, he was just a fucking joke.
Right.
And the same thing with O'Malley is from the other side, from the left. It's just the corruption and just his approach to everything. And Maryland is kind of an important state. We don't think it is an important state politically, but it is. Because it's blue, but it's pretty conservative. It's like West Virginia. Mm-hmm. You would think it's red, but it's blue. And, a governor from there, you kind of need your conservative Democrats if you're going to run as a Democrat. So if your own people don't like you, it's like Christie with Republicans, right? Liberal Republicans. Does he have any chance now? No, because of how badly he fucked up with these bridges.
And see, that's why a lot of people think it's Jeb's nomination, because no one else, in most watchers' opinions, has the money-making ability. Because of course, it's a Bush. He's got money. There's no question there. The fundraising problem, it's not. And yeah, the Bush name, like it or not, it's catnip to like those establishment douchebags that you hate. It is. But still.
Just because they want to pretend there's no that Ted Cruz and Rand Paul don't exist doesn't mean
they're not electable, though.
Case. How are they not electable?
They're not electable, though. They're not.
Back it.
You back it. They haven't won shit.
You're saying they're
not.
For
the record, neither of them have even said they're going to run. Neither is Jeb, for that matter.
No one has said they're going to run. Not even Hillary. That's not an argument.
If you think fucking Rand or Ted Cruz has any chance in hell of actually getting nominated, I have news for you, my friend.
Okay. Would you like to make a bet right now in front of our that one of those guys will be the nominee? Would you like to do that?
That neither one will be?
Assuming that they run. Assuming they don't run, I can't vouch for that.
Right.
But I'm telling you, the next nominee will be a Tea Party politician. And Jeb Bush is not. And not a pretend Tea Party politician like Marco Rubio, a real Tea Party politician. No one else is going to be able to hold the Republican Party together. I mean, look at what happened last time. They all split to shit.
But they're not a majority still, though. Why would they hold the thing together? They're breaking off from the Republican Party, if anything.
Romney didn't get a majority of the primary votes. Go back and look at how many primary votes, as in popular vote, not as in delegates, he got. Look at that and tell me if you need a majority to win the nomination.
Ron Paul still didn't get even near enough to do what you're talking about.
2012, and that was Ron, not Rand. I didn't say Ron Paul's going to get the nomination. I said
Ron has run more times and has more recognition, I think.
No, Rand has way more recognition. Now, Ron Paul hasn't done shit since he's got done running in 2012. He's completely stepped out of the limelight and let the modern Tea Party take over. For better or for worse.
He was tweeting the State of the Union. He's done stuff. He's just not out.
He's been a commentator and an analyst, not a politician. How's that?
Yeah, he's
retired. Better? Okay. Where do you get the idea that these guys cannot get the nomination? I want to discuss this now. This wasn't part of the show, but this wasn't part of our plan for the show. But I want to hear this.
It's not enough. There's still not enough. It's not enough.
Okay, Joe. Okay, I'm going to love...
Just the fact that you can get a few districts to flip doesn't mean shit. It doesn't make a nationwide coalition enough to get a nominee.
Okay.
You might take 20 more years if it's the same trend, maybe, but no, not this time.
Okay. You're not making a case. How are they not electable?
I'm not making
you're
one.
Saying, you're saying they're not going to make. You're saying they're not going to get the nomination, not the election, the nomination. We're clear on this, right?
Nomination, yes.
Okay. Did you see how far Santorum went? Just so we're on the same page here.
Okay, Santorum is religious. That's different, and it's more.
Oh, but Ted Cruz is not.
He's not a Bible thump like Santorum.
Oh, he can be. He can appeal
but it's
to
not
that
the same
demographic.
thing. It appeals to that crazy, religious movement that elected Reagan and Bush.
He can appeal to that demographic very easily. Actually,
Rick Santorum was in front for like a fucking week, and by that measure, so was Herman Cain. Am I going to say that some pizza bag to Papa John ran, he's going to get elected? No.
No one said he was in front. See, now you're changing the argument to adjust the facts to fit the theory.
He got no vote.
In front. How many states did he win? How badly did he split Romney? And he canceled his campaign. If he hadn't done that, he would have kept fucking him over.
I think you could say that was. I think it's unique to Romney because Romney was a Mormon.
Okay, now you're just trying to make excuses.
No. I remember talking about that at the time, even on this show. That there were a lot of conservative Christians in the South, in particular, that didn't want to vote for Romney because they didn't know what to make of the Mormon thing. That was a real thing.
Well, I would say they didn't want to vote for him because he was from the North, and so was Santorum. Actually, a lot of them voted for Gingrich, who wasn't even a contender other than in the South. Well, so there's so many factors, Joe, and you're not considering them. You're just trying. You don't want these guys to be electable.
No, that's
you're
not
trying to exclude any facts that would
prove otherwise. Just for the record, you haven't produced shit for a fact of why they would. I've written tons of reasons why they wouldn't. Money being one, the fact they can't build a coalition for another. That's their whole million.
I'm trying to argue that they can build a coalition, though. You're not listening.
Why? How?
The coalition they would build is all those crazy evangelical Santorum voters, plus Ron Paul's voters, plus all the kids that voted for Ron Paul. If you look at the numbers, Joe, numbers don't lie. If you put those two together, that's actually more people voted for one of those two candidates than in the primaries than did for Romney.
Okay, so answer me this then. If the religious thing is going to be Rand's to take and to use as a tool, what do you make of a recent straw poll that actually puts Huckabee out in front? Wouldn't he take all those crazy religious votes away from him? Tea Party nominee, Huckabee counts. Huckabee, absolutely. Is a Tea Partier now? Are you kidding me?
He's always been.
What?
I don't know what you would call... See, what the fuck is a Tea Partier?
Well, I should ask you that. You're the one that's a fan of them.
I'm not a fan of them. What I'm saying is, yes, Huckabee, actually, I made this bet with a patron of ours that it would be who do we consider basically Tea Party candidates? And we had to kind of come up with a list of names. And the three names that emerged, Rand, Cruz, Huckabee. One of those three. You're right. Huckabee is a very important player. However, I don't think he'll run.
Well, he has many problems. I don't know how you'd call him Tea Party. I mean, for one of the problems he'd run into, I read about that he pardoned, Haley Barbour when he quit being governor of Mississippi. He pardoned like a shit ton of people. Yeah. Huckabee did the same thing. And one of those guys actually went on to kill like 3 or 4 different cops in some kind of confrontation later on. That's a major problem for his electability.
It is a problem. But look, what we're talking about here is the kind of candidate he is. Like I said, I don't think Huckabee will run, period. What I'm saying is we're talking about electability of the kind of candidate. So if you look at 2008, there were really only 4 even semi-serious candidates. And that was McCain, Romney, Huckabee, and Paul. And you look at the numbers that Paul and Huckabee got in that election, in those primaries. Okay? And then you take a look at the numbers Paul and Santorum, and you kind of might have to throw Michelle Bachmann in there for the short time that she was in there too, because she went to endorse Santorum.
She did get numbers, yeah.
She was on the map, and she endorsed Santorum, so you'd assume that those evangelicals went for Santorum. Okay? You look at how far that has expanded over the course of 4 years. And now we're talking about an open seat and absolutely no unity and nothing to say for the Republican leadership. You're going to sell me Jeb Bush. Really?
I'm not pleased by it. I just think that there are certain
you
things going for it.
Overestimate Republicans how much they like the Bushes. Now,
I don't think they like him. They didn't like Mitt, and yet he got the nomination. They didn't like Mitt, and yet he got the nomination.
You remember everything that went down with that, though, don't you?
Of course I do. And that's why I know that the milquetoast guy's going to get through again, just like he did for the Democrats and hopefully.
I will take that bet, Joe. I will take that bet. If anything, I thought they were trying to groom Christie because they figured,
and now he's torpedoed himself.
Somewhat of a new face. He's, he can appeal to moderates, but he's really not a Tea Partier.
And then Fox News had already turned against him before this Bridgegate thing happened, and now they've fully disavowed him. What is interesting, because for a little bit they were trying to defend him, and then more mayors came out saying, "Yeah, he did it to me too," and they were like, fuck it, let's just let him roast on his
Okay, well, yeah, forget him, yeah.
No, it's not that's a dead horse, but you mark my words, dude. Everyone's going to cue up the fucking patriotic music and show decrepit Daddy Bush from his iron lung by then, when it's time for him to run. Everyone's already starting to wax nostalgic about W. I didn't think it would happen so fucking soon. I'm shocked.
I haven't seen anyone
You can't tell me I'm not horrified. I already had my friend the other day tell me that I'm not one to say this, but I'm literally going to leave the country if Jeb Bush gets elected president. It's going to be horrifying. I'm not saying I like the idea. I'm just saying that I think our politics and our political system is so broken that no one truly different can ever get through.
And I think, okay, so for once, Joe, you're the jaded one and not me.
Yes.
See, I honestly think there is a higher probability, I'm not saying this is going to happen, I think there is a higher possibility of Rand versus Warren than there is of Hillary versus Jeb.
Now, I think that Hillary is going to crash and burn. I just don't know who's going to...
Okay, so Hillary is going to crash and burn.
Yeah.
But Jeb is not. See, this is what I don't get.
It's why Hillary has had a national profile for way longer than Jeb, and her negatives outweigh her positive. That's why I think she's going to crash and burn. And of course, they're gonna just let Benghazi hang over her neck. And you don't think her Democrat rivals are going to do that too?
Oh, absolutely. But hold on, Jeb doesn't have the costs of him don't outweigh the benefits.
I don't think him. No, because he could just say things that are subtly saying, "Yeah, but I'm the smart brother." I'm more
It's like being the smartest kid with Down syndrome.
I'm just saying, and he was a popular governor. You can't handwave that away. I'm saying
he was a popular governor in Florida. I'll give you that, but
he was popular.
Okay, flipping around our discussion from before on him, how is he going to carry the Ron Paul kids?
He won't. It won't matter.
He won't. Okay, at this point, how is he going to carry the evangelicals?
He will carry the evangelicals.
He will not carry the evangelicals. Yeah. Evangelicals hate Bush now. Are you kidding me?
If the evangelical guy bows out, he will carry the evangelicals. He'll say enough for the right things, talk about Jesus enough times. That's what happened with Santorum. You think he had a fucking chance? No. Even Mitt was able to get some of them. It wasn't enough. But they just simply didn't.
That was in 2012, not in 2016. A lot of Mitt's approach, and I would say this worked to an extent, was evil Obama. We got to get rid of Obama. If you split the party, Obama gets reelected.
Right.
Jeb won't even have that. And let me tell you, Republicans are not fans of Bush's now. There's neocon Republicans, which are fans of Christie and McCain, and they might be fans of the Bush, but he does not even hold a plurality. I can't believe that you're actually taking Jeb Bush seriously.
Apparently, you weren't watching the Republican convention this last election when they were showing the Bush montage. And even though, they didn't have him there, he's still kind of radioactive to have in person, but they did this whole retrospective. Here's the thing, though. I don't think that W is going to affect Jeb to some extent. I think that will be at first, but then after the first month, everyone will stop talking about it. I really think that that's going to be their...
Joe, I have to remind you of something very inconvenient for you. In 2012, when the primaries were kicking off, you were trying to convince me Rick Perry was going to take the nomination and no one was able to stand up to him. And he was one of the first ones to go down in flames.
Here's the difference. I didn't know anything about Rick Perry then, and I should have learned more. Because, and mostly because the mistake I made with him, I didn't actually listen to him, I listened to people talking about him. That was the problem.
It doesn't sound to me like this is all that different. You're telling me that the Republican establishment, played a Bush montage at their convention.
Yes.
How is this evidence that Republican voters are going to vote for Jeb Bush? Yeah, that's who the establishment wants to shove down their throats. Yeah. By that logic, we could say the Democrats are going to nominate Hillary. You acknowledge that's not likely, but somehow you're using the exact same line of evidence to say Jeb Bush is going to win. I don't understand.
I think the Democrats nominating Hillary has a very strong likelihood because they don't you already pointed out, they really don't have anyone else. Unless someone different like Elizabeth Warren takes her on. And even Elizabeth Warren, I think she'd do well because of how different she is, but she'd still not win. Because for some reason, Democrats are pussies and they just want to go with the known one.
See, okay, it's funny to me, Joe, because for once you're being the jaded one and I'm being the optimistic one.
Of course.
What I see happening, and this is for both parties, and the seeds of this have been planted in the last two elections. If you remember what was going on with the Democrats in 2008, it wasn't pretty, and they got lucky that Edwards got knocked out when he did by a scandal, because if that had been a three-way split, it would have been completely insane.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, Republicans, we saw the clown car full of candidates in 2012. Jesus Christ.
What they should have at every Republican debate? I would love if they just had when they come piling out from backstage.
I mean, you had
That's what I hear in my
head.
You had
two guys that could actually make sense. You have to agree with them. They don't agree much with each other. But these are two guys. They're actually serious politicians. You had Ron Paul and, what was his name? John Huntsman.
Huntsman, yeah. Huntsman was the one guy that didn't want to, put a fucking piece of duct tape over his mouth. Yeah.
Right. Well, no, I would say Ron Paul, I mean, you don't agree with him. You have to respect that. At least he makes sense. Everyone else was like, really?
Ron Paul, he would make a point that's good, another point that's good, and then he would say something that's completely crazy. And that's kind of the way Rand is. Well, and that's why I don't think they're electable.
You just don't agree with what they're saying that you think is crazy, and that's what makes
a lot of the country does think a lot of the stuff they're saying is crazy.
I want to see polls. I want to see data. I don't want to hear a lot of the country because Joe Ryan thinks it's crazy. But
they aren't yet because they're not in the race yet.
You could say the same thing about Warren, honestly. But the thing is, where I'm going with this, again, I'm not talking about whether or not they necessarily make sense. I'm talking about electability, which has nothing to do with making sense. It's how receptive people are to it. So, like I said, except for those two, everyone is just talking. You're just like, really? These are the guys running for president. Really?
Yeah.
Oh, did you really just say that? So, these seeds have already been sowed. People are so boiled over on both parties, on the establishment candidates and the stupid shit they say, that when you have an open office, when you have an open presidency, and there's no, they won't have Obama to kick around, because he's not there. He's not running.
Yeah.
He did that a little bit in 2008. They were picking on Bush, but McCain, in my opinion, quite reasonably said, hey, I'm not Bush. You wanted to run against Bush? You should have run 4 years ago. Now, I'm not a fan of Bush, but he's right. You're not running against Bush. So, yes, there's that Obama legacy that might help Republicans a little bit, just because anytime you've had the same party in the White House for 8-12 years, you're going to have a little bit of an advantage to the other party.
Just ask Bill Clinton. Yeah, exactly.
Well, he was running against an incumbent, though. We're talking more about Bush Jr. in 2000, Obama in 2008, when it's an open seat. Yeah. But what I'm saying is I honestly see both establishment-pushed candidates being the first to get nixed in both parties in the primaries. I honestly see 2012 plus 2008. And we have to remember, Romney wasn't the establishment candidate. Let's try to not forget that. The establishment didn't like Romney. They wanted Perry or Kaine or Gingrich. And the people on the ground, the Republicans, just said, fuck you.
Really? People wanted Kaine? Really?
The establishment wanted Kaine. People did.
Really?
I would say that at one point,
really?
when Perry went down in flames, they didn't have anyone else, it became Kaine. And then when that whole scandal with Kaine, then it was like, okay, how about Gingrich? No. Okay, Romney?
Establishment as you get as far as his policies.
Who?
Mitt. He's establishment as you get as far as he's like McCain, just real center-right.
I would disagree.
You know,
I would say
big business, pro-big business.
I would say
totally.
I would say, at least by the standards of back then, he was more of a moderate. Now he would almost be a Democrat, not a Republican.
Well, it's fair to say the party's changed a lot in the last few years. It has, but true. I still don't think that I'll call it the lunatic contingent is quite enough. They're going to make a lot of noise, and they did last time, but I don't think it's enough. I think that I would say, to refine my prediction, like I said, I think there's a higher likelihood of the quote-unquote establishment Democrat being knocked out simply because, Hillary, she's a known quantity. What are we going to learn about her we don't already know? She came, I think, in 2008 when she ran against Obama, she came as close as she's ever going to come.
Oh, yeah.
Going to be
I agree.
too old. She's going to have the Benghazi and Obama stink all over her the entire campaign. The Republicans would torpedo her. And I think the DNC, to some degree, realizes this. And they're just hoping that somebody kind of distinguishes themselves enough in the next year or so to merit running.
And they won't.
O'Malley is one of them.
And they won't. And I'll tell you why no one's going to establish themselves. Because the Democratic Party is really starting to eat each other. Like, it's not necessarily coming through the front yet, but it's there. Over this whole, how do we deal with the Obamacare problem, with the continuing economic problems, like, they're not necessarily in agreement with Obama. I'm not saying they're joining Republicans. They're not. But they're starting to have a lot of internal friction. And you saw what that did to the Republicans. The same thing is going to happen to the Democrats. If Hillary goes up in flames, you're going to have a field of like 8-9 candidates like you did for Republicans. And you're going to have that many for Republicans. And no one's going to get a majority. So you're saying what you're trying to push is these guys can't get a majority of Republicans behind them. Or even for Warren, they can't get a majority of Democrats. You're right. You don't need a majority.
I don't think it'll even be enough of whatever you do need.
Okay. Like I said, watch what happens. It's that simple. I mean, we've got a while before it happens. But
we do. I will throw in a wild card that I just was thinking about that may run. In this year, it's not a presidential year, but you remember our old friend Charlie Crist?
Oh, jeez, again.
Now, someone might remember that he was the Republican governor of Florida. And then he tried to run for Senate as a Democrat, correct? And then got kicked out of there.
No, he tried to run as a Republican.
Right, Republican lost to Rubio, and then ran as an independent.
And lost.
Yes. So, he was just on Bill Maher this week, pimping his book in part, but also in part to talk about the fact that he's running this election for governor of Florida as a Democrat. Would it be interesting if he, and this is jumping ahead a lot, would it be interesting if he, because he was a popular governor, people forget that, what if he won and then used it as a platform to run for president in 2016?
He won't make it.
It'd be interesting to see.
What, as an independent or as a Democrat?
No, as a Democrat. He fits in that party now.
Okay.
The Republicans move away from him.
Hey, I'm a Democrat. I was a Republican 8 years ago, and now I'm asking for your Democrat vote in the primaries. No.
It's perfect, though, if you think about it. It's perfect, because Democrats love converts, believe me.
Ask our mayoral candidate here in San Diego, what's his name, Nathan Fletcher, if Democrats really love converts. You see,
you're talking about one mayoral race in one city that has a lot of
I don't see any, and I don't know. I'm talking about Democrats that didn't vote for him. I don't see you presenting evidence, though. What I see you, everything I see you talking about is the political establishment and the media pushing these guys. They are not representative of the population and how people vote. And we've seen increasingly over the last 2-3 elections, people going against the current. And that's kind of what I'm saying. The media is turning into the same thing. They're these mouthpieces to just bark. People
I'm not denying that. That's true.
I believe you had another you wanted to talk about a little bit more about popular media in that same, because we could argue about this for hours.
I think that, I don't know, it's so fractional that I think there's still, here's the thing about the establishment. They're not gone. And yeah, enough of the, let's say, the fringe kind of groups are around. There's a lot of them. But they're all against each other. So I think they all cancel themselves out, and you still get by 36% Mitt or by 38% Jeb. And we're at this kind of pivot point where in another few elections, maybe one of the fringes will come to dominate, but we're still in a transitional period where the establishment, it's losing ground, but it's still a huge base.
So you're saying the establishment can't come to... Well, I'm sorry, not the establishment. You're saying the fringes can't come together.
They haven't so far. Once they do, I think...
Okay, what about all the quote-unquote Tea Party candidates or Tea Party politicians in Congress? How do you explain Ted Cruz? Let's go back to that election.
That's one district.
Ted Cruz is not a district; it's a Senate.
Well, okay, he's one state in a crazy state.
District, one quote-unquote district. That's the second largest state in the country.
That's still one state amongst 50, though.
It's not one district; it's the second largest state in the country. See, you can't just undervalue my evidence to try to make a point. Hold on. Going somewhere with this. He ran in the primaries. There were 5 guys in the primaries. And one of them, the front runner, was David Dewhurst, Rick Perry's hand-picked, anointed person for that position. His lieutenant governor, hold on, and he got 48%, and he went off against the second guy, the runner-up, Ted Cruz, who was like in the mid-30s. And then guess what? Ted Cruz kicked his ass in the runoff. Why? Because all the people behind all those other guys, and the third guy was a libertarian that was Ron Paul backed. Believe it or not, Ted Cruz was not backed by Ron Paul in the first round. It was a guy named Glenn Addison. All of them, they don't like Ted Cruz, but they voted for Ted Cruz. So when you talk about how these fringes can't come together, I don't see it.
You're talking a primary on one political party side in one state when I'm trying to talk about elections of one party against another party in the country. That's different. If the whole world if the whole U.S. was Texas, you might have a point.
No,
it's not.
Now you're just plain rearranging facts again. We are talking about primaries. We're talking about getting the nomination. That's in the primaries. That's not the general election. We are talking about primaries.
And it's still 50 states worth, not
It is 50 states. And again, if you look at the primaries in these states, I mean, it's not every state. You don't have to win every state. But if you look at the primaries in Kentucky. Rand Paul won. And now
he's from Kentucky.
He won, didn't he? Just like Cruz is from Texas. You see, you keep trying to undervalue my facts because they're inconvenient for you.
So when Rand runs, he'll get to Kentucky.
Mike Lee from Utah. You see, it's just there's too many exceptions for your rule to work. Okay, now let's have a look at Let's have a look at what's going on in Kentucky now. A little gem named Matt Bevin. Okay, that guy is the guy running against McConnell from his own party. A primary challenge to the minority leader of the Republicans in Senate. And in this time right now, you would think Republicans would come together. No, he's being challenged, and of course he's got all kinds of Koch money behind him. Now, he's running...
Gee, there's no connection between one and the other, right?
Oh, no. The Koch money is huge. I'm not saying it's not there. What I'm saying is they're challenging fucking Mitch McConnell. You would think they would see Mitch McConnell as an asset, right? Nope. And do you know what the latest polls are on McConnell versus Bevin?
I'm guessing Bevin's winning, but you know why that doesn't apply?
Bevin is not winning, no. Right now, they're 53-31 McConnell. So think, oh yeah, he has no chance. Okay, here's the problem. A month ago, they were 53-17 McConnell.
Mm-hmm.
See, no one's... Okay, so you can't sit here...
Again, that's a primary in one state. And the difference being, McConnell has been in the Senate for how long now? When you're running against a guy with that long a record, of course there's enough negative shit.
Oh,
you can take that whole known quantity thing and use it against him, can't you?
But
Jeb's never been president.
He hasn't, thank God. He's been governor, though. He has a record.
And he was a popular governor.
Oh, come on, Joe. You're jumping around from one talking point to another.
You can't say that Rick
like Sean Hannity
burning down Florida can't make Jeb look better, even from in hindsight. Come on. That's all I'm saying.
You don't need. Rick Scott's not going to be coming out to make him look better. Rand Paul is going to be throwing shit at him to make him look bad, and he's going to succeed at it. All he has to do is point. Listen to me. To Jeb Bush's drug policies and the fact that his own daughter, while he was governor, got busted for possession, and he basically got her out and said, "Oh, we need to be compassionate when it's my daughter." Well, that alone, there, you just lost every Ron Paul vote.
And I'm not saying that. Well, I'm saying that losing every Ron Paul vote that he would have anyway. I already accounting for that.
No, but you said earlier.
You're not thinking that I'm gonna. I think he's gonna get Ron Paul votes. Do you? No, I never said that. You're saying that the fringes cannot come together. I am asking you to give me an evidence, because I've given you examples. I've given you Kentucky, I've given you Texas, I've given you Utah, and there's others. I mean, those are congressional districts. Those are fringes in one party. I meant fringes nationwide can't come together. Who said? No. We're talking about nominations. Why do the fringes in the whole nation need to come together in the primaries? When we're talking about the general election, that's a completely different discussion. And that actually goes for Democrats, too. You're saying Warren can't win. Obama won. If Obama won, why can't Warren win? When we're talking about nominations. He wasn't a fringe in his policies, though. Not really. He kind of was by 2008 standards. Well, I don't know. Going back to that, it has changed a lot. But I don't think it's changed that much on the Democrat side. Hillary's as establishment as it gets, is what I'm saying. Oh, she is. And if Hillary, like I said, I think Hillary is going to be the first one to crash and burn.
And when that happens,
so too.
if you've got, hold on, this is the Democratic Party. We have to remember it runs very differently than the Republicans. Okay, one of the things, like it or not, that one of the big factors in 2008 was it was a black guy versus a woman.
Right.
And everyone knew one of them was going to be president. So this is a big thing. It's minority versus minority. Now, let's say Hillary goes away, which I think she will, and you've got Warren.
She's a woman, yeah. She takes that woman thing.
For the Democratic nomination against a sea of old white guys. Biden, O'Malley. Who's going to... Come on.
She's going to mop the floor with them, especially when they start debating.
Exactly.
Definitely.
So you see that happening in the Democrats. You can understand that, but somehow Rand or Cruz aren't going to be able to knock out Jeb Bush. You see, in the Republican side, it's not about appealing to minorities, obviously. It's about appealing to the young, the rebellious. Rand is great for that. And it's about appealing to the evangelicals and the crazy conservatives. Now, your idea that these two can't come together, I'm still trying to come to terms with that.
Okay, so...
Let's imagine this. Hold on. Let's imagine you have the primary run-up, and both these guys, Cruz and Rand, are both in there. They're campaigning. Okay, it's almost Iowa time. Rand decides, you know what? Cruz is doing better than me. I'm going to drop out. I'm going to endorse Cruz. You don't think all those Ron Paul kids are going to go for Cruz?
I don't think that. No, I don't. I think they would. Of course they would.
Of course they would. And you don't think
that won't matter.
Hold on. You don't think evangelicals will go for Cruz?
I do not. No.
The whole Santorum vote. You don't think they'll go?
Not all of them will. No, not enough.
Well, we're not talking about all of them. We're talking about a plurality or a majority, because it's never all of them. Okay.
Not a plurality.
For Cruz?
Right.
Why not?
Because there are always inevitably some. I mean, Santorum might run again. We don't know.
Oh, I want to see that. I would love to see that.
The problem you're trying to pin me down. The problem is you're the one just assuming that they will. Why do you think that some Jesus freak won't run between now and then? Why do you just assume that?
I didn't say they wouldn't.
Run, and both of them will take all of those votes away from those guys. So you're telling me I'm not making an argument. You're the one assuming shit without any evidence to back. We're all speculating here, man. All of us are. Both of us are. Just be honest about that.
Okay, I don't disagree with you. What you're saying is some Jesus freak like Santorum, or let's say Pawlenty, one of them, there's a lot. There's a lot to choose from. Decides to run, and they're going to leech votes from that candidate.
The Jesus freak vote will go for them instead, yes.
What I'm saying is...
That easy.
Okay. Now, why couldn't Ron Paul take Santorum's votes? Why was that... Santorum was a fucking joke. The only reason he got as far as he did, I agree with you completely, is because he was the Jesus freak in the race.
Yeah.
Give that. Now, why couldn't Ron Paul get those votes?
Because by their very stated policies, libertarians aren't theocrats, and people like Santorum and his backers are.
So Ron Paul...
That's the difference.
Okay, right. So Ron Paul, I agree with you 150%. Ron Paul couldn't appeal to them. Now, Ted Cruz can. I am saying Cruz, even better than Rand, can bridge that gap. That's all I'm saying. And Huckabee...
He can better, but I don't think it's enough.
Well, then it becomes...
You're getting into splitting hair differences now.
I'm not splitting hairs. I'm saying, okay, so then it becomes a measure of quantitative competition. Let's say you have Santorum running again, or Pawlenty, and you have Cruz. Whereas you had Santorum and Paul, they really split that vote between the two of them. I'm saying Cruz is going to be to Santorum this time what, say, I don't know, what Huntsman was to Romney. He's a little similar, or he is a similar little candidate. The evangelical guy will be to Cruz, or even to Rand. Now, on the other side, if you look at the neocon side, let's say you have Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio. You're gonna have other little guys running too. There's always little candidates. It's not like...
I'm thinking those will be Walker, Kasich, people like that. Now that Christie can't run, it's kind of an open door for people like that. And I think they have a national profile enough to try.
Right. Yeah. So they will leech votes from the establishment candidate, just like some Jesus freak could leech votes from Ted Cruz and Rand Paul. You have to apply the same standards everywhere.
Yeah, but as they start knocking out the little guys, that leech, it becomes immaterial. It won't matter. That's what happened with the other fringe candidates in the last election. That's what I'm saying. And they leech while they're in it, and then when they get out because they go through 2-3 primaries and they got 2% of the vote, what's the point in staying?
Oh, but that doesn't happen to evangelicals. That doesn't happen to the Jesus freak candidates, the little Jesus freak candidates.
I'm saying that they're not going to pick it up from they're not going to pick up that whole vote when that guy bows out. It's not going to happen. I don't think it'll happen. I just don't think it'll happen.
Okay, you just said he could appeal to them, except the evangelical guy. Well, so now you're saying the evangelical guy drops out and they still won't pick him up. Now you're contradicting yourself.
No, I'm not. Because I think that the Huckabee types will take votes away from a Rand and a Ted Cruz while they're in the race. When they don't win, when they bow out, they're probably going
to get 3%, right?
Or somebody like that, not Rand, because they don't get along, those two sides.
They might, okay, good. The politician might endorse Jeb, but his voters are still going to Cruz.
Well, I think that the voters would probably split up between a few.
I disagree completely.
But here's to close this out. Yeah, to close this out. Here's the difference I see between, you said yourself, the parties work differently. The reason why I think the establishment being knocked out in the Democrat race kind of coalesces behind one other person, like Elizabeth Warren, because they're not that different, and they still kind of all abide by mostly the same sort of outlook, and they're not nearly as fractured as Republicans. Republicans right now, to me, are 35%, 20%, and 15%, or something like that, close to that. 22, 16, and 32, or something.
Okay, I agree.
Of mainstreamers, Tea Party, and evangelical. And you tell me which percentages each are, but that's why it's lurching around, still even after Bush, we're almost 6, 7 years from now, with no identity. Is it the party of Rand, or is it the party of Boehner, or is it the party of, those questions are not answered yet. And I think that's why those things matter so much more for them in the primaries.
I agree with you to an extent, but there's two factors you're missing. One is the time factor. We're still 3 years away from the election, despite what Hillary says. It gives the Democrats plenty of time to fracture even more, be a lot more fractured than the way you're describing them. In my opinion, that's what's going to happen. That's my prediction.
It may happen.
Okay. I'm almost positive.
But traditionally, they're always unified, though, aren't they?
What? I'm sorry. What?
Traditionally, aren't they more unified, though? I mean,
traditionally in the short term, like the last 15 years, maybe, but not always.
Kennedy and Johnson were pretty damn opposed when they were running against each other, but Johnson ended up carrying out Kennedy's policies after he got killed. So I'm just saying that
again, by that logic, you could say that Reagan ended up carrying out Ford's policies. This isn't, or Bush's policies. This is not, you're grasping at straws. The other factor here is that you're adamant that the fringes cannot come together against the establishment. But I don't see that. What I see happening is the fringes will attack each other. There are multiple fringe candidates, but when it gets down to one fringe candidate versus the establishment guy, all the fringes march behind the fringe candidate for one reason: he's not the establishment guy. Both libertarians and evangelicals and Tea Partiers, they are a lot more prone to vote against someone just to tell that person to fuck off. And that goes for the establishment Republican, and that goes for Democrat. And people look at this, and this is where these guys like Todd Akin come from. They're fucking nuts. And they're like, good God, really? This is your candidate? But you talk to a Republican, and they agree with you, a fringe Republican or a Libertarian, like, you know what? Yeah, but it's a protest vote. It's a protest vote against the establishment Republican in the primary. It's a protest vote against the Democrat in the generals. And that's happened the entire time the Tea Party fringe has been in existence. I don't see how you're in denial about it, but I don't see any evidence of the contrary.
I guess it comes down to, I disagree when you say the religious fringe would vote for the libertarian fringe guy. When their guy drops out, I don't believe that would happen, no.
He just has to not present himself.
Because religious guys don't like people who don't think that it should be a theocracy in this country. They don't want that idea of, we should tolerate. No, because they don't tolerate. They want everyone to be their religion. That's what they want.
Okay, so what you're saying, I hear you.
A libertarian would vote for a religious guy, but I don't think a religious guy would vote for a libertarian when they are that side of the wall. Like
why you need a candidate that can bridge those two together. And you're wrong that libertarians would necessarily vote for a religious guy. Look at what happened in Virginia.
Well, actually, I take that back. They probably wouldn't. And that's why I don't think he's one of those guys.
Which is why you have to have someone that can bridge that gap. Which would
you would, and I don't think Rand or those guys.
Cruz, Huckabee. Any of those three, in my estimation, that's one of the reasons they get attacked so much by Democrats for being flip-floppy and not having very clear positions on shit is because they're trying desperately to hold those fringes all together behind them, especially Cruz and Rand. And I think they're getting better at it. They have 3 more years to get better at it. I think you underestimate their capacity. And the other thing is, all they have to do to get those votes is point the finger at Jeb Bush and say, yeah, I know I'm not as crazy religious as you would like, but just look who's running. Look who I'm running against.
I think you might be surprised. We'll see.
We'll find out. So in any case, I believe you wanted to talk about the popular media, or we think we should just...
Real quick. I think we should just mention real quick, and this is a thing that I could probably spend a whole show talking about because I have way too many opinions about it, but people who are older might be aware, more so than people our age, that one Mr. Jay Leno has now bowed out of the Tonight Show hosting duties very emotionally on Thursday night. And what was interesting was on Sunday, 60 Minutes, we already talked about 60 Minutes, how much we love them on a previous show.
Yeah.
It's basically where you would go if you're over 55 and want news that doesn't offend you or challenge you at all. It's just, it's like oatmeal for dinner for old people. That's what it is. It's like a thin porridge. It's unoffensive, bland, Anyway, this is how they get introduced to things that are new to them. It's really interesting watching it because you can tell it's written and produced in that way. But anyway, they did this whole kind of 16-minute story about how Jay Leno's leaving. But it was interesting the tinge they took. They framed it not this guy who's accomplished so much over a 22-year career hosting The Tonight Show and all the great things he's done, which nobody's ever said that about Jay Leno, on a quick aside. That's always been the thing about Jay. He's never been loved. He's always been hated or tolerated, never loved. But it's like, it's like everyone, old people taking their pill before bed. That's what he's been all this time. And, his audience has aged with him, and he hasn't gained any new ones. Yeah, he's number one, and he still is. But that demographic is one that's about to start dying in huge numbers, so it doesn't really prove anything going forward. And NBC, the whole debacle with Conan aside, and that's, like I said, a whole different topic they go off on for a long time, that was their first attempt to hand the torch off to the next generation. Now Jimmy Fallon is that guy, and he does things that are, more in tune, and his bits get tweeted. When's the last time you saw something from the Tonight Show get tweeted? Or Facebooked, or anything? Yeah. It's a complete thing. So 60 Minutes frame this as not just this guy stepping aside, but our entire point of view, our generation's guy, is being pushed aside for the next generation. He's not retiring because he wants to. He's being pushed aside because he's a relic. And it's true to a degree. NBC doesn't even deny it, really, when asked about it. But it's interesting that they're framing that as a generational war. And when they go to talk about, how he is, and it was basically a puff piece, and they basically lied, because at the time the Conan thing happened, Leno was like, oh yeah, it's time, I think it'll be in good hands, he's talented. All the same things he's saying now about Fallon. But now he claims, oh, well, I was pushed out, I was fired the last time, Conan said he quit, couldn't get it, I was brought back because he failed. It was very stilted toward Leno's point of view. But it struck me as how out of touch the whole story was, and it just really reminded me, it's the same thing of the old white-haired man establishment with the new establishment. So it's interesting that they're right. That kind of, their institutions, yeah, they are going by the wayside.
Well, I think a lot of it, honestly, interesting. Like I said, I'm not a big guru on entertainment, and that's definitely more Joe's specialty than mine. But what I've been seeing, a lot of this, is just the death of television.
Oh, completely.
These shows
it's how it used to be.
Right, to our generation, really anyone under 40, these shows are not entertaining. I can't stand to watch Jay Leno. It's like, this is boring.
And his
supposed to be funny, but it's not.
His finale show was boring.
Right.
It was the same dopey monologue jokes, the same, it was just boring.
And if I think it's boring, what am I going to do? I'm going to turn off the TV. I had for 5 years, I didn't even have cable because it carried no value to me. And I'll go sit down at my computer and I'll start looking up stuff that's entertaining for me, that's not on television. So I think a lot of the reason is finally the media is starting to come over and realize, okay, look, if we want to keep traditional media, radio and television alive, We really have to update it for the modern world.
We have to appeal, to the younger people.
And I think politicians are coming around to that as well. I mean, these are their desperate final moments. No, look, Russia, evil,
it's
Republicans, Democrats. They're like, no, just go away. Put on your diapers, eat your oatmeal, get the fuck out. And it's not necessarily disrespect for the old people so much as it's disrespect for that top-down feeding culture. Like, look, whatever's right is whatever's said on TV and on the radio and by the big politicians. And you may have competition between a few big conglomerates, but God forbid you think for yourself and say, you know what? Fuck you, NBC, and fuck you, Fox News. Fuck you, Putin, and fuck you, Obama. We're gonna think for ourselves.
Right.
They can't get their heads around that, and I love watching it. I love watching it die. And even a criticism I had of you earlier on the show, where you're looking at what the establishment and the media, mainstream media, are saying, and you're not looking at what the people on the ground might actually do, how that might not match. It's the same idea. Our generation is capable of thinking that way, and it makes me happy because really, you're going to have a lot less deception and a lot less of the world run by bullshit as a result.
And I think, 60 Minutes spoon feeds you news, and Jay Leno spoon fed you supposed comedy. That's the way it was, and that's the way that generation likes it. They like being spoon fed their facts, and that explains how Fox News does so well. It requires no effort on your part. It's just brought to you, packaged up. Here you go, wholesale. What's interesting though is, just to close out the example, not to get too far into entertainment, but Fallon, he's at least aware enough that you have to do things that interest people on Twitter and interest people on Facebook that get posted. And hey, did you see this crazy bid he did with Justin Timberlake? It gets attention when otherwise they wouldn't have it. And the one knock that I had on how NBC handled the Conan thing, they always go by the fucking Nielsen ratings, and it's retarded because that's an old way of measuring things. It's not relevant to our generation because why? I'm not staying up till 11:30 and be a zombie at work to watch a show when I can just dial it up when I'm getting ready the next morning or during dinner the next night. It's not that big a deal for me. But I'm not counted in the Nielsen ratings because I'm not watching at the time.
Outdated ratings, Joe? Outdated? You mean like Gallup polls that used to be the most accurate thing ever, but now they leave out anyone under 30?
Right.
And they showed Ohio actually being competitive with
who has a fucking landline anymore? Right. Yeah. It's
right. You mean things like unemployment being used as a measure of the economy, where it's like, look at the labor force participation. No, we don't need that. Or even the poverty line being measured basis on food prices. You mean that shit doesn't work anymore, Joe? This is exactly what I mentioned earlier. You have these bureaucratic policies, and this is not limited to government.
No. Media is very old-fashioned when you get down to the nitty-gritty of a lot of how it's still run, particularly TV and movies.
Right, you get there, and then you can't update this shit because the bureaucracy gets in the way. But just because you can't update how you measure shit doesn't mean you're still measuring it accurately. You just become, it's like, here's the world, and here's you pointing at it and seeing something completely different.
And it's an interesting time because we're at one of those kind of, there's generations all the time. It kind of just depends on how you measure a generation, which some people kind of think that whole thing is stupid, trying to call a generation a certain thing. But I think it's fair to say there are different identifiable eras. And I think that it's fair to say that you and I were living through one changing into another. We're in kind of a transitional period. And this, call it stupid TV all you want, but it's another piece of evidence in which the old is giving way to the new and the different. So it's interesting to know one way or another. So,
well, anyway, I think that's a good place to wrap up. I think we've gone a little longer than we intended. So thank you for being with us.
As usual, Jay Leno kills the show. I'm just kidding.
Alrighty. Well, I'm Neurotoxin.
I'm Joe Ryan. Thank you for listening to Edge of Chaos. Thank you for listening to The Edge of Chaos. We can be found on the internet at edgeofchaospodcast.com. That's edgeofchaospodcast.com. Contact the show at edgeofchaospodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at edgeofchaosshow. We can be found on Facebook at facebook.com/The Edge of Chaos. Neurotoxins blog can be found at neurotoxins with an S, fyg.blogspot.com. My blog can be found at joeryansworld.blogspot.com. For Neurotoxin, this is Joe Ryan. Thank you for listening to The Edge of Chaos. Hello, Edge of Chaos listeners. Joe Ryan here. Today, instead of playing the usual comedy bumper after the show, I wanted to make a personal appeal about the upcoming MDA Muscle Walk, which is happening in San Diego Sunday, March 23rd, 2014, at Crown Point Park in Mission Bay. I've started a team and am participating in this event in honor of my friend Travis McKinney, who had Becker's muscular dystrophy and passed away at age 32. Please check out my team page and make a donation, even a small one, to help people like my friend Travis. MDA provides much-needed research, treatments, therapies, medical equipment, assistance, and even a yearly summer camp. This is a disease that affects many children, but also families and friends, so please give what you can, even if it's only a small amount. Every little bit can make a big difference in someone's life. My team page can be found at http://www.mda.org/go/team Travis. So basically www.mda.org/go/team Travis. On behalf of my friend and his family, I thank you.